So right now, there are over 3,100 data centers running in the United States, and another 1,800 are already under construction or in planning. Most people think of AI as something that just lives in the cloud, right? Like it doesn't actually take up space anywhere. Okay, that's wrong. Every single AI query you've ever typed traveled to an actual building, actual concrete, actual steel, actual water bill. And here's a story that shows exactly how physical this has gotten. Last year, Kevin O'Leary, the Shark Tank guy, backed a massive data center project in rural Utah. Big money, big plans, the kind of deal that usually just gets built. It didn't happen. Local residents organized against it hard, and the project got scrapped. A billionaire with a national TV show couldn't push it through a small town that didn't want it. That's the story of this entire industry right now, happening in 100 small towns you've never heard of. So let's actually look at what one of these buildings needs to exist, because the list is longer and weirder than you'd think. First one, water. A single large data center can use up to 1 billion gallons of water a year. During peak summer heat, that's close to 3 million gallons in a single day. Some use even more than that. Ranchers out west have reported data centers pulling over 5 million gallons a day. That's basically the daily water use of a small town. Now, most of that water isn't going into the computers themselves. It's for cooling. Chips generate a ton of heat, and heat kills hardware. So these facilities run massive cooling systems, and a lot of them still use evaporative cooling. Same basic idea as sweating. About 80% of the water that goes into that system evaporates. It doesn't come back. 2/3 of new AI data center projects in the US are being built in places already dealing with water shortages. Makes sense why that's a problem? In North Carolina, parts of 10 counties hit exceptional drought this year, same time cities were restricting lawn watering. In Georgia, a project moved forward while the entire state sat under severe to exceptional drought. Wildfires were burning in the south at the same time. In Tucson, Arizona, the city council straight up rejected a data center complex over water and power concerns. That region only gets 7 to 10 inches of rain a year. In Iowa, officials found 40 unpermitted wells at a single data center site. And here's the one that sounds made up but isn't. In one New Mexico county, residents had low water pressure for months. They kept calling the county, complaining, getting nowhere. Eventually, someone traced it back to a nearby AI facility. It had been quietly pulling 29 million gallons of water for over a year before anyone caught it. Okay, so that's water. Now the power problem, and this one's bigger. U.S. data center electricity demand has nearly doubled in the last 3 years. One forecast puts total demand at 194 gigawatts by 2035. For context, that's roughly the output of 19 nuclear reactors in new demand alone. Here's the thing though. It's not that America can't eventually generate that much power. It's speed. New transmission lines take years just to get approved, let alone built. New power plants take even longer. And the equipment itself is backed up industry-wide right now. Transformers, switchgear, gas turbines, all facing shortages. Every data center in the country is ordering the same parts from the same handful of manufacturers at the same time. One utility company in the Midwest, AEP, put out a number that puts this whole thing in perspective. They said they're tracking 190 gigawatts of new demand in their connection queue. That's 5 times the size of their entire current system. One company being asked to essentially build 5 copies of itself just to keep up. So companies are building around the problem instead of waiting. Some are signing deals directly with nuclear plants, buying power before it ever touches the public grid. Some are building their own gas plants on site, skipping the queue entirely. And regular people are already feeling this in their bills. One Virginia utility just proposed its first base rate increase since 1992. That's roughly $8.50 more a month for a typical household starting in 2026. Electricity, water, transformers, turbines, transmission lines, all needed by the same industry, all at once. So here's the obvious question. If this is such a massive undertaking, why is so much of it happening in the middle of nowhere? Why rural Texas, rural Virginia, rural New Mexico, instead of the cities where these tech companies are actually headquartered? Comes down to four things. Land. Cheap, wide-open land is easy to find outside cities, and these things need a lot of it. One project in Northern Virginia sits on about 1,000 acres. Near Amarillo, Texas, there's one under construction right now that's being called the largest data center on Earth. Power access. Rural land usually sits closer to major transmission lines, and it's a lot easier to permit a power plant next to a cornfield than next to a neighborhood. Water access, at least on paper. Rural water systems, especially out west, have historically had way looser oversight than city systems, right up until residents notice their wells running low. And tax breaks. 37 states now offer some kind of tax exemption specifically for data centers. In Texas alone, that exemption is projected to cost the state over $1 billion a year. It's on track to become the most expensive incentive program of its kind in the entire country. Texas is really worth looking at here because it shows exactly where this is heading. Texas is on pace to overtake Northern Virginia as the biggest data center market in the world by 2030. Cheap land, cheap power, and a regulatory environment built to just say yes fast. It's also got something most states don't. Texas counties have no zoning authority. A lot of rural communities have no legal way to block a data center from going up next door, even if every single resident is against it. That's exactly the gap that's now causing friction, in a state that has rolled out the red carpet for this industry more than almost anywhere else. Which brings us to the backlash, and it's bigger and weirder than most people realize. Take West Virginia. Earlier this year, the state passed a law, HB 2014. It stripped local communities of control over data center projects. It also redirected the tax revenue away from them. Residents did not take that quietly. Over 1,800 of them signed a petition demanding the governor veto it. In a small state, that's not a rounding error. That's basically a town standing up all at once. In Indiana, county commissioners unanimously rejected a $10 billion data center project after farmland concerns and community pushback. $10 billion, and a handful of elected officials in a rural county just said no. In Texas, the city of San Marcos banned new data centers outright. And remember Kevin O'Leary's project from the start of this video? That wasn't a one-off, it's the pattern. Even Texas's own governor has courted this industry harder than almost anyone. He just promised new restrictions anyway, after admitting data centers were dividing his own political base. Property values, electricity bills, water access, farmland, noise, that's the actual list residents are fighting over, county by county, without much national attention. And it's cutting across party lines in a way most tech issues don't. Democratic candidates in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania are campaigning explicitly against data center expansion. Meanwhile, Republican voters in rural Texas and Virginia are organizing against Republican-friendly state governments over the exact same issue. Left and right, for once, mad about the same building. Now, to be fair, there's a real argument on the other side too. Data center operators love to point out that agriculture uses way more water overall in the US than data centers do. And honestly, the numbers back that up. In Colorado alone, alfalfa farms used an estimated 394 billion gallons of water in a single year. That's enough to cover every Denver resident's indoor water needs for over 35 years. So if you're only measuring total gallons, data centers are still a small slice of the pie. The counterargument is that agriculture has been part of these communities for generations. It built the water systems those towns rely on. A data center shows up, asks for a slice of that same system overnight. Then it automates almost all of its own jobs. That's the tension, not the raw numbers. Some companies are also switching to newer, direct-to-chip liquid cooling. It uses dramatically less water than the old evaporative systems. Some manufacturers claim up to 300 times the water efficiency. And on the power side, this build-out is pulling forward real investment in nuclear, transmission, and grid upgrades. Upgrades the country probably needed anyway. Local governments do collect real money from these projects too, sometimes hundreds of millions a year. That's part of why so many communities said yes in the first place. So there are two ways this plays out. Scenario 1, efficiency catches up with demand. Liquid cooling cuts water use dramatically, the grid expands fast enough, and rural communities end up with jobs and tax revenue, without eating the worst of the trade-offs. Scenario 2, AI demand keeps outrunning infrastructure. More small towns turn into the next West Virginia, the next Tucson, the next Kevin O'Leary story. An industry that spent years building quietly outside public attention becomes one of the most contested local political issues in the country. In red counties and blue counties both. There's an old pattern worth remembering here. 100 years ago, the resource that decided who had power, literally and economically, was oil. Whole towns got built and abandoned around whoever controlled the wells. Later, it became electricity itself, deciding which regions industrialized and which got left behind. Today, that resource looks a lot like data center capacity. The land, the water, the power required to run the next generation of AI. AI isn't just changing computers. It's changing where cities grow, where power flows, and who controls the future.